That morning there were drops on the stock exchange. They were so sharp and so dire, stocks suddenly dropping 10, 20, 30 points at a time, that it's said that there were shrieks and gasps in the gallery of the New York Stock Exchange.
The 1929 stock market crash was the beginning of a worldwide economic hardship. The market broke, thousands of banks failed, and millions lost everything. Perhaps it makes you wonder, is it possible that we learn from past experience to understand our current circumstances and perhaps shed light on what's about to happen? The 1920s is one of the fastest economic expansion in the 20th century. Like the 90s when people started to own personal computer and enthusiastically talking about the internet. In the 20s, to be able to talk with someone in other locations in real time by some surreal gadgets called the telephone feels at all magical. The maturity of radio broadcasting technology and thousands of radio stations enable people to enjoy music in their living room without going to the bar. Jazz rise in response to the proper time and conditions. A flow of inventions kept people under great excitement, such as vacuum cleaners, toasters, refrigerators, frozen food, Band-Aid, and television. Henry Ford, the Elon Musk of his day, developed a T model that transformed the American way of living. Families began to go for a drive on Sunday, other than visiting the church. Teenagers could borrow the family car and socialize independently for the first time. By the time Ford produces 10 millionth vehicle, 9 out of 10 cars on the road worldwide were Ford. The popularization of cars has driven new expressways being constructed. New industries such as motels being spawned led to car service stations and second-hand car sales. Many farmers left their dreary home in the countryside and moved into big cities to search for a better life. In the 20s, New York was racy, adventurous at night, and the constant flicker of men and women and machines feels at all promising and satisfying. It was a time when tolerance became an important virtue and women began to free themselves from household maintenance to work as a telephone operator. It was a time when Hollywood film beat all of its competitors and became the world's best. But like all good things, Christmas Day does come to an end.
The tremendous crowds which you see gathered outside the stock exchange are due to the greatest crash in the history of the New York Stock Exchange in market prices.
I guess we can't talk about all the excitements of the 20s without mentioning the stock market. What caused the crash, really? The 20s was dominated by Republicans, with 3 back-to-back Republican presidents in office between 1921 and 1933. For the time, it couldn't be more glorious for the American capitalism. Business and personal income tax were reduced. Policies were in favor of the business. The power of union were weakened. These are very good for the American economy.
Republican President Calvin Coolidge had run his administration on the belief that business was the basis of America's prosperity. Government should not interfere.
Business earnings were rising from the start of the 1920s, and more people believed the price of common stocks were catching up with the rise of corporate earnings and the prospect future. In the early 20s, stock prices were low and yields were favorable. Beginning in 1924, the stock market was rising despite some minor hiccups along the road. It was not until 1927, due to external circumstance, one event sowed the seeds for the eventual disaster. In America at the time, people were able to enjoy the welfare new technology brought, not so much in Britain. In the 1920s Britain, there was a great deal of industrial discontent, most notably from the coal miners. Miners had to work long hours under dangerous conditions. Industrialists refused to buy new machineries or improve mines. In 1925, Britain went back to the gold standard. That made the British pound very expensive. This means people outside of Britain need to pay more to buy in Britain. This further eats away industrialists' profits, as people come to Britain to sell, not buy. So industrialists cut wages and extended working hours. This eventually led to the general strike in 1926. At the same time, large amounts of gold were flowing out of Britain. When a country loses gold, that's a serious problem. Banks need gold reserves in order to extend credit. Credit is needed to finance war effort, help business make investments, create jobs so that people can spend. In order to stop the gold outflow, Britain went to America to ask for help. After careful consideration, Fed agreed and lowered interest rate from 4 to 3.5% at a time when the American economy was already near the late part of the cycle. Like today, large volume of government securities were bought, leaving the banks and individuals extra fund to spend. This extra fund were used to finance the purchase of common stocks. With extra money, more and more people were rushed into the stock market. This is when the situation began to get out of control. The nature of the boom changed in 1928. Even the consecutive men were made to believe that the price of common stocks were catching up with the business earnings and the prospect futures. Time was peaceful and exciting, and certainly the Republican administration would take no more than necessary to tax any earnings. People, banks, and businesses were borrowing money to buy stocks. Then in 1929,
at the sound of the opening bell on Thursday, October the 24th, 1929, there are no buyers. On Tuesday the 29th, the New York Stock Exchange goes into a total spiral. Brokers beg to sell at any price. It comes to be known as Black Tuesday. $25 billion evaporate almost overnight. This isn't just about Wall Street. Banks will shut down all across the country. $140 billion in savings will disappear. Ordinary people are ruined.
Having said all these, let's see if we can figure out the formula that bred the Great Depression. Prior to 1920s was World War I, which wrecked the world, so the world desperately needs reconstruction, which means a lot of room for economic growth. Coming into the 20s, led by the knights of automobile industry, steel and radio industry, market was filled with vision for the future and boundless optimism. Republicans reduced tax rate, policies were in favor of the business. Then in 1927, due to external circumstance, Fed lowered interest rate to help Britain regain economic stability, but backfired the stock market with excessive buying on leverage, which eventually made the crash. If history is any reference, let's try to plug these variables into the 2008 financial crisis. Coming into the 21st century, internet technology fueled the market with vision for the future and boundless optimism. Republican government advocated for banking deregulation. Market was crammed with credit. Commercial banks loosened their mortgage requirement. Wall Street created the scandalous mortgage-backed securities. Then when Fed raised interest rate to control inflation, boom. People blame the poor for the crisis. They say these homebuyers were reckless when they took a high risk to purchase $1 million real estate. But it was the circumstances, political policies, expansion of credit, just like the 1920s, that overflowed the market with excitement in an already optimistic environment. I think what's fascinating about history is that it helps remind us the same thing happens over and over again, in one form or another. In the next episode of the economic series, we'll turn our attention to China, in which I'll talk about the chariot that had pulled China at full speed, how it dashed through the most stony ways that in no more than 4 decades turned its economy into a world wonder. China's real estate. If you're interested, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Well, as always, best wishes to you, my friend. May whatever you're doing brings you a happy and fulfilling life. And I hope to see you in the next one.